What's up, everyone? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this, I want to talk about the overall market and answer the question: is there about to be another leg lower? Is the market about to get a big rejection? Is the market correction done, in my personal opinion? But before I break any doubles information, before I get into any more details, let me mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. Anyways, let's talk about the market. So, as you guys can see, the market has seen a very, very interesting trend shift. Just to clarify, before the market was doing this, we were making higher highs, higher highs, and then higher lows, and just continuing to rally in the upwards direction. But as of recent, the trend has shifted, and now we're making the opposite kind of moves. We made this low right over here, breaking this low here. Then we made a lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. And then are we about to make a lower high? If that's the case, we may end up making a lower low all over again. So one thing worth mentioning is the fact that the market moves in waves. So if you were to look at this from a Elliott wave perspective, if you look at our impulse waves, our first drop from the all-time high would likely be wave one, which would have been this move right here. This was a significant dip we got all the way down to about 537. And then wave two was this nice rally back up to 555. And then this very big drop we got. So SPY went from 555 all the way down to about 507. That was a 50 points drop. That could be wave three, and wave three tends to be the most significant drop. So it makes a lot of sense. And then you'd be looking at this push right over here. Depending on how high we go, this could be wave four, which suggests that there could be one more move to the downside. Typically, it's not as like drastic as the third wave, but that's going to lead to another potential sell off for the final bottom. So that's what Elliott wave is kind of like suggesting right here. When you look at these impulse waves, that's the first thing worth mentioning. Additionally, when you look at SPY on the daily time frame, I have it right here, you'll notice that we also have this gap down here. I'm still kind of eyeing this, and also our 200 EMA. So notice how we had all these gaps on SPY. Pretty much all these gaps filled. We had this gap here. I think that we kind of gapped below this gap, so we haven't fully filled this gap. But there's this gap right here. Then there's another gap down here, which SPY filled. We had this gap over here, which SPY filled, but we didn't fill this gap over here. So there's one more gap that's left that's very significant. Not all the gaps left in like the 200s, 300s have to get filled, guys, but I still think there's a good chance that because we came very close to this one right here could still fill. So notice how right here we have this gap. It's unfilled, which suggests that this range might be tested again, right? That's going to be the first thing that's worth noting. In my personal opinion, it's a strong possibility that we might end up seeing another dip because of that. Then you also have the VIX. The VIX also has a very, very similar structure. The VIX basically pumped and then dumped right on the daily time frame. But if you look at the 4 hour time frame, we still have this big gap over here that's formed on the VIX. So I think the VIX is going to dip lower, and I think that the market's going to pump higher, causing the VIX to drop down to fill this gap into the 19s. But the VIX could still get a bounce depending on many different catalysts, as we still have this gap to fill up here. So, what could cause the market to drop? Honestly, guys, I don't know the exact things that would cause it to dip. It is possible it could be CPI. CPI on Wednesday could be the factor that causes the market to get a rug pull. Maybe, maybe not. We'll just have to wait and see. Could it be the situation involving Iran? That could be another factor. Israel and Iran, all the tensions that are rising, that could cause a temporary dip in the markets as well because of the fear and uncertainty involving events like this. The war could cause a big move, so that's another potential factor. Could it be the Fed? Could the Federal Reserve say something that's very important? I think much of the Fed's moves have been kind of like priced in, except for if we get a surprise during CPI. So, and there could also be some kind of black swan event. So who knows? What could be the thing that causes this market to dip? But I just want to say that that's still a strong possibility. From a technical standpoint, you could even draw out a rising wedge that's forming on SPY. So with this rally, I think the 4 hour could be used for this. I'm just going to double check this. If we start this wedge like this, you guys can see how this is kind of like aligning really nicely. But from what I was looking at it, I think the hourly is going to be a little bit better. So I'm going to use that instead to draw this out. It might look a little bit better for you guys could see. So right here, you guys can see we have this nice looking wedge that's been forming on SPY, at least for the time being. We'll see if it dips a little bit and it just continues this rally. But either way, this could still allow us to push all the way up to about 537. depending on if we dip a little bit, maybe I could just kind of like adjust it like this. It doesn't really matter too much. At the end of the day, we're still pushing upwards and the market is still looking a little bullish right here. So I favor that we're going to continue to push higher. Another big red flag about this is yes, we could push higher. We have this gap to fill all the way up here in this 540 area. So there's a good chance that SPY could fill that gap if we break past 535. So, yes, we could go higher. But also notice that upon this dip in the markets, when I zoom out and I go back to the 4 hour, we bounced off our key Fibonacci retracement area. And that's typically not always going to be a perfect sign. So, if I were to take a fib retracement chart like this, I'll show you guys this. You will notice that with this nice little rally right about here, we actually got to bounce very close to our 0.786 retracement. So see this blue line right here, this is the 0.786 retracement, which happened to be around this 509 area. We bounced very close to that. So generally when you get these sell-offs and you get a bounce off the 0.786 retracement, that tells us that we're not necessarily done. It oftentimes means that the market's going to reject and we might retrace even lower beforehand. So this was just like a defensive bounce that came from technicals and these market makers. Now, another big red flag would be just a simple pattern, pattern analysis of SPY. So check this out, guys. SPY basically had this first little dip right here, and then we rebounded a little bit. Excuse me, then we continued lower. But look at this pattern. SPY came down like this. We formed like a double bottom, got a nice sharp rally, then we rejected, right? And then if you look at that, whoops, from a different perspective, you will notice that something very similar happened over here, how we essentially dipped down from that high, and then we hit this low. We're forming kind of like a double bottom, and now we're trying to see a sharp increase in value before we could see a potential decline after that. So to me, it's all looking the same. I'm just seeing the same thing that's kind of repeating itself again and again and again. So from what I see developing here is I would probably take a fib retracement chart just like this. We'd probably look at where we ended up bouncing from here. And then I would presume that we might be approaching 537. I think if we break past this imbalance, if we break past 535, we might temporarily push. But I'm worried that the closer we get to this 0.618, if not the 0.786 retracement, this range right here into the 540s, there's going to be a risk of us getting a big rejection again. So I don't necessarily think we're done. So when it comes to trading this, I'm going to say this. I'm not just going to short SPY for no reason. I'm not just going to jump into puts and say, we're going to crash. No. What I'm doing is I'm willing to play the chart on a daily basis. And when we get those signals that the market's about to top or something like that, then we'll be ready just to be safe. There could be some opportunity to short once we get closer to the 540s. It could be worth a try, but I would set a stop just to be safe if you are willing to take that bet. But just know that for now, we're bullish. For now, SPY is going to push higher. Okay, we're going to likely try to push higher. When SPY dipped over here, notice this right here. When SPY dipped to this low from right here, when we got our temporary bounce, so if you take a Fibonacci retracement, you will see that, whoops, sorry guys, I pressed the wrong thing. From the way things are looking, if we were to make a low, so if we come down here, SPY got a bounce up to about the 0.618 retracement from where the drop happened to be. And then if you take a Fibonacci retracement chart right here, notice where the 0.618 retracement happens to be. If you take this low here and you come down like this, well, the 0.618 happens to be around the 537 area. Between there and then the 0.786 is around 545, 544. So I'm thinking that 537 to 544 tend to be areas of risk, and there's a high risk of us potentially getting a rejection in that area. When will the market reject? I don't know, guys. It could take a couple of weeks, could happen next week. It all depends. So we'll see how quickly we get to this area. I think what's going to happen is we're going to push up towards our 0.618, if not the 0.786 fib area. That's going to be between 537 and 541 on SPY. And then we might see a rejection based off from there. So that's what I think is very probable. I see the same thing potentially forming on the triple Q. Let me just close these levels to show you. Notice that the QQQ made a very similar move. This was very aggressive in terms of the way it kind of like dipped. And I think that we're going to see something very similar to that of SPY. I think they're just going to kind of like mimic one another. So look at how this potentially dips the way it did. And seeing how it dipped, we actually bounced. We actually fell below our 0.786 retracement on the triple Q. And we got a retest of that before we tried to rebound. So it's very interesting to see. What I suspect is going to happen to triple Q is the same thing as SPY. We're going to be looking for a nice little rebound. But notice how we have these very, very similar structures, right? We have a tendency of coming down like this, forming a double bottom, and then getting a big rejection. Right here, that happened. The same thing happened right over here. We got a nice double bottom, nice little rally, then a big rejection, right? And now we're forming a nice double bottom like structure. We're attempting to rebound. Are we about to get that big rejection back to the low? So if we break past 480 on the triple Q, we could actually turn back up and we could be looking for a rally. My guts tells me that's not going to be the case. And I think that we're going to be looking for another rejection at our key level. So I'm presume that from this high, we're going to likely see a test of this 0.786 retracement or very close to it. I think 455 is likely coming to about basically the 460 area, but somewhere between that range. And I think that the QQQ will reject somewhere there. That's what I think is going to likely happen before another continuation lower, because just like SPY, we had a very, very similar structure. We got this very, very big rejection during our waves. We had a very, very major sell off that happened to the triple Q. This has been a lot weaker than that of SPY. And I think that there's a good chance that this is going to resemble the next move. So I think we have a rising wedge forming on the triple Q as well, just like that of SPY. And I think that this might continue to help us push higher, but ultimately there might be a move to the downside coming. If we were to draw this out just hypothetically like this, you guys can see how this is like where our support happens to be. And then this resistance area is just very close to like this. This is where the triple Q is kind of like pushing towards. So we might temporarily push in this range, but then this might lead to a sell off similar to this move right over here when we got this temporary rally. I think that everyone started shorting the market really hard. If you look at the data right here, the puts and call option positioning has been extremely fearful, and the market makers are causing a temporary squeeze of shorts. We may attempt to fill this gap around 457. So I think 454 to 460 could be a nice potential target, but there is a risk of us getting a big rejection as time goes on. So we'll see if that ends up being the case. So be very, very mindful of that. And then we have to just wait and see how things end up going. So just be very, very careful. The last thing I'm going to talk about is Tesla stock. Tesla, in my opinion, is going to form a bottom soon. However, there's no guarantee our bottom is quite in, as the trend on Tesla is still quite bearish. I think we could rebound temporarily, just like that of the market, but there's no guarantee that Tesla is out of the water just yet. There's no guarantee Tesla is done with this retracement. From this low here, we can actually draw out this fib retracement like this. Notice that the 0.628 to 0.786 retracement takes us to about the 210s. I think we're not going to focus on that yet. I think we're going to be looking at about 208 as a potential target if this does rebound a bit. But then we'll see if we get a rejection depending on CPI and any news overseas. So we'll see. I think we're going to get a temporary rally on Tesla, but there could still be more downside coming because we haven't really reached this low right over here. We haven't reached like this 178 area. And if the low is in for Tesla, I still think there might be a little dip coming, and that's still going to give us another buying opportunity. So I'm not giving financial advice when I say this, but I think that 180 to 190 has been a very, very good entry point for Tesla. And if we end up losing that area, it's going to just give us more buying opportunities because I see a big rally coming as we get closer to the Robotaxi event. And as we approach the end of the year, Tesla is going to see a big recovery rally. So I'm not really worried about this. When you really zoom out of Tesla like this, as you guys could see, it's forming an inverse head and shoulders. Okay. This is a giant inverse head and shoulders on the chart that's forming, right? We did lose the low here around this 195 area. That's fine. It is possible we dip again, but there's going to be a big rally coming in the next upcoming months, and we're going to be pushing back up to the 300s. I'm not really scared whatsoever. All I see is a giant inverse head and shoulders, and Tesla's going to make a big recovery. So this is what it's basically doing. I'm not going to be too detailed about this, but this was our left shoulder, right? It's huge. This is our head, okay? And then we're going to be forming a right shoulder. We could go lower. This could be slanted a little bit. That would be completely fine. I don't know if 180 is the bottom or if we go a little bit lower. Either way, this could still see a big, big, big recovery towards the end of the year, after the election especially. So we'll see. But this is what Tesla looks like to me. It looks very symmetrical, and I think we're going to be looking for a nice recovery. I didn't go into the full details for Tesla when it comes to technicals, but I just want to say that there's a good chance the market is going to See some interesting volatility. So for now, the market is bullish. For the super short term, if you look at SPY and the QQQ, they are trending up. They're going up. Okay. But for the medium term, I still see a risk of us getting a rejection and that final leg lower to be coming. I still think it's a strong possibility. Don't just bet on it aimlessly. You have to watch for confirmation, look at key levels, and be very careful with shorting this market. There's no sign we're rejecting yet, but just know I still see the risks. I just want to be very open minded and very, very honest about everything. With that being said, thank you for listening. Have a great day, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one, and peace out.